Hello friends! Welcome to another recap video. I feel like I'm getting deja vu. I've said this so many times, but this video we are going to talk about July, August, and September of 2025. Those were 3 months that I was just recently kind of assimilating into Nashville life, nannying a bunch and watching a bunch of movies and spending time with friends, making more friends, figuring out just how to be an adult. But they were 3 really fun months. I'm excited to talk about them. If you have missed the other recap videos and you want to hear what was going on before that, find those videos on my account. I have a playlist that has all those videos in it. Yeah, just recapping all this time since the last time I made a recap video. But let's jump in to July of 2025. So as I kind of mentioned, I was nannying a bunch. I had kind of started to slow down on the babysitting front. I was picking up all these shifts from the nanny agency that I work with, and I did that a lot right when I moved, and then started, as you know, the summer picked up, I was doing music things and hanging out with friends and whatever. I didn't do that as much. There was one family that I continuously babysat for, and otherwise I was just with my nanny family pretty much. That involved a lot of walks to the park, a lot of watching Disney movies. I got very fluent in animation, a lot of PB&Js. So it was easy enough. I made myself busy, but my job was very chill. All of my kind of life moments that happened in July were just like fun friend things that got to happen. So I had a really fun 4th of July. Nashville's fireworks show is pretty epic. I am not normally a huge fireworks person, but it was really cool. We went to the bridge and watched the fireworks over the river. Just very cool, with a whole big group of people, and then went back to their place and listened to house music for hours and hung out till 1, and it was just a really good time. I'm not really a 4th of July person, but I had a great time. My childhood best friend Greta came to visit. She was here with a couple of her friends from Minnesota, where she is from, but she and I got to go get matcha and talk and catch up, and it was really cool to see her in my city and show her where I live. I went to a game night at my friends Grace and Sean's, and I got to meet their dog that night. I love him. Their dog's name is Hayes. He is a mini Bernedoodle like the dogs I used to have, and oh, I just love him with my whole heart. Guys, I have to be so honest with you, I just had to stop for like an hour because my mouse died, but we're back. He just is like the most affectionate, lovey dog, and he gives me so many kisses, and a lot of people don't like that, and so I bear the burden of being the one to receive the kisses that the dogs want to give. I just love that boy, so it was so fun to meet him then. Also, we had been planning this for a minute, but my really good friends Rachel and Charlotta came to visit me in Nashville that month so that they could see Nashville a couple months after I had moved. I met them in California in high school through our church and our Bible study, and we are still super tight. I love them so much, and so they came and visited, and we got to do all sorts of fun things together. Rachel does not drink, and I'm the youngest of the friend group, so it was the first time that we could fulfill our dream of Rachel being our DD and the rest of us drinking. So it was really fun. We went and got cocktails and lots of coffee and just explored, went to bookstores, went to Franklin. It was very fun to spend time with them, and I'm so thankful that they came. And my friend Aubrey played a little pop-up show in the park, and that was such a cute little moment. Got to go support her there. I love when my friends do things like that and I'm free to support them, and it's like, I don't know, just the stars align in that way, where it's like, wow, you announced this today and I have nothing going on, and it's like free and easy to come to. This is the best. So that was pretty much all of just life in July. It was a lot of hanging out in Nashville, hanging out with friends, nannying, working. I wrote 4 songs that month. The first one I wrote was called Thermostat, and that was when I wanted to personify my apartment as a person who was growing lonely when I was really the one that was. I don't know how well it turned out, because I think in an attempt to personify my apartment, it just seemed like I was talking about myself. It didn't really remove it from myself enough. When you write with a metaphor, I like to use it as kind of an escapism tactic, where you're assigning these feelings to something else so that you don't need to acknowledge that you're feeling them yourself, instead of using them as trying to explain your own feelings better, because I understand my feelings fine, and so I find it more interesting to use metaphors and figurative language as a distancing between myself and my feelings. But I didn't quite manage that in that song. But basically the point is, like, someone can come over and just mess with the thermostat and everything else, and I just wanted someone else to come and exist in this space with me.
I want you to knock on my door, you to cross the threshold, want your feet on my floor, you to say that it's cold, you can fuck with the thermostat, sequester the throw.
I wrote the song Cup of Tea that I still am not sure how I feel about it. Essentially, it was, I'm not sure if I'm my own cup of tea, because I just kind of kept doing things in friendships and in relationships that felt embarrassing to me. I was like, these people keep coming back and being friends with me, even though I feel like I'm doing embarrassing things. Maybe I'm just not my cup of tea.
I'm booked out every evening, but when it's dead in the morning, I convince myself nobody's coming back. Yeah, I convince myself there's something that I like. I look out at the city, consider me such a pity, 'cause before they're barking at my door, they live with them, I'm stuck with me, I'm longing for.
I wrote The Leech, which is also about feeling stuck in my apartment. I think once a week I try to have like truly a rest day just to kind of relax and take a step back. I was getting super, super bored right when I moved here because I didn't really have friends to hang out with. I guess my life didn't feel busy enough to need a whole rest day, but I was still taking it, which I don't regret. But I have like things now that I ask for Christmas to like give me opportunities for things to do, whether it be like the coffee crawl or Regal Unlimited, but I didn't have those then. I think I posted on my close friends, I'm gnawing at the curtains of my enclosure, and then that inspired that song.
I just wanted to win the fight, leave my apartment, leaving nothing to its name, forgo the rain, and be a nomad, chasing freedom, chasing fame, and spend the $1,400 buying tickets, meals, and flights for me and all my friends, and not the leech I left alone at night. So don't mind the bite marks left on the curtains, I just wanted to leave.
And then the last one is not in the same realm. That one is called What You Need. And something that kind of happened between July and August is that my dogs, Birdie and Riggs, had to be rehomed. My dad got a new job, which was a great opportunity for him. He is definitely flourishing in that place, but it required him and my mom to move to a place where they would just be living in an apartment because my sister is in college now and I'm living on my own, so they weren't going to have a whole house. And my mom was just afraid of what living in an apartment and that kind of relocation would do to our dogs. There was a period of time where I was going to take them, but then my parents decided that they're just going to give them away, and I still am not feeling good about it. My mom is very much like, we needed to do the thing that was best for them, that could give them the best chance of having a great life, and being with us was not that thing. And I wrote What You Need basically about how I'm selfish in that, and I don't really care. Like, I don't really care what you need if what you need is to leave. I recognize that that's not a healthy perspective, but I just miss them and I didn't want them to go. They say, if you love something, you let it go, and I just don't know how to do that at all. I'm very bad at letting things go. It was really hard to write because it ended up being about my childhood dog, Norma. I had written this whole letter to my mom before I left for my gap year program because I just kind of had this feeling she was going to die. She was 13. That just said, you need to make sure she's alive for when I get home. And she wasn't. And it was a similar situation. Not that my mom chose that, even though she kind of did, but you can't choose when your dog gets sick. That's what that song's about.
Yes, I left you when your bones were too brittle for stairs, when your ears were too weak to compare every method with which to repair. You seemed ready on the day before your final breath, with more passion than you've ever been. We've betrayed and forgiven since
For music that I was listening to, I definitely was listening to a lot of kids' songs again. I was playing a bunch for my nanny kid. At the top of my list, unfortunately, were like Life is a Highway and Shiny from Moana. But I started to get him to listen to some more oldies to get him to recognize these things. So he was loving Octopus's Garden by the Beatles at the time, and that was one of my favorite Beatles songs growing up, so that was fun. I was listening to a lot of this morning playlist I made a month or two before that. I have this morning montage playlist that's like fun, upbeat vibes, and I've had that for years, but I finally made this playlist that's just like my morning vibes that are like energetic enough, but still just like really just feel bohemian and relaxed and loose. I don't know, the words aren't coming to me, but those songs made it into heavy rotation because I was always playing that playlist in the morning. It was Potion by DJO, Honey Mine by Ben Platt, Out in the Garden by Annika Kilkenny, Cruel Affair by Bia Doobie. Those were some of the top ones. I read one book that month. It was The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. I decided to start reading books that had movies so that I could watch their accompanying movies, especially the ones that I already owned. I have taken that to a new level and it became an addiction since then, but it was great for when I was really bored back then. I enjoyed the book, if I remember correctly. So 4 movies. Lots of these are kids' movies again because I did get to watch them at work and I grew to really analyze animation a lot. So the first one was the Emoji Movie, and I did not enjoy that. The animation was fine, but of course, like James Corden, I just did not like the dialogue in it at all. But I am kind of a Disney purist. There are a couple of like DreamWorks things I like, but for the most part, it's just Disney. We watched Moana, and he loved Moana. I don't know why, but he did, the kid I nannied. And then I watched The Virgin Suicides, and I think I just am not a Sofia Coppola fan. I didn't like what she did with it. It kind of felt like an indulgent version of The Virgin Suicides when I read it as very naive, uninformed, like a story that you can't really get yourself into. You're always on the outside of it, and the movie just felt too indulgent for me. It didn't have that kind of exclusivity. I watched Inside Out with my nanny kid, great movie. And we watched The Emperor's New Groove, also a great movie for different reasons. The animation on that sucks, but it's just such a good time. The personality in that is through the roof. I watched The Goldfinch. I had just read that book the month prior, I believe, and I did not like the movie adaptation. It really made everything feel too polished for me, and I talked about the book in the last recap video, but I just found it so interesting what a character study it was, showing how imperfect Theo was and how messy his life was. And then you watch the movie and it just feels so pristine, and it didn't do it for me. Also, the casting just felt too pristine for me too. I wanted like people I didn't recognize in it, and that is not what I got. I watched Get Out with my friends, and I was proud of myself for that. I was not sure if that was something I could handle, but it was very palatable to me, aside from, you know, like the premise, but just like fear factor, it was palatable, and I found it to be, yeah, an interesting premise. I'm glad I hadn't really seen much like it before, because if I had, I think I would have been like, oh, whatever. But this is like the kind of movie you should start out with when you're watching this genre, so that was fun to watch with them. I watched A Complete Unknown. I actually found that pretty boring. I loved Timothée Chalamet in his like Little Women, French Dispatch era, Dune 1, but then after that, I just haven't loved it, and he's been trying to do more impactful roles, and I just really preferred him as an indie boy, so I wasn't a huge fan. But also, I'm not a big like true Americana person. I love folk, but he's very Americana, and that subsect of folk is not as much my favorite. We watched Finding Dory, great animation, but honestly, don't come for me. I'm not a huge fan of the Nemo movies. I don't know why. I wish I was. And then I went and saw Elio in theaters with the kid I babysat, and that was fun. Really weird. Pixar is churning out some weird stuff. Actually, I don't know if that was Pixar, but Disney even is churning out weird stuff. They're trying to do these original concepts for their animated movies, and they just aren't landing for me. And then all their live action movies are just recreations of animated stories. So maybe they'll age well. I don't know. I also got to see the new Smurfs in theaters with my babysitting kids, and that also was not something I had a good time with, but it was a free movie. I watched Ratatouille with my nanny kid. Great movie. Oh my goodness. It was older Pixar, so the animation is hit or miss, but just the story and the dialogue and the acting, the line delivery, so good. I ended up going and seeing The Phoenician Scheme with Rachel when she came. We went to an indie movie theater and saw that. I wrote a song called The Phoenician Scheme, if you want to listen, and it was about wishing that I could go on a date so that someone would pay for me to go to the Phoenician Scheme. The movie itself was alright. The French Dispatch is my favorite Wes Anderson, but he really just peaks in his style in The Grand Budapest. And Phoenician Scheme felt like it was sort of there, but it sort of wasn't. I loved the Michael Cera of it all. I like him, but my sister is in love with him, and so I have experienced a lot of Michael Cera in the past couple of years, and this role was something I really liked him in. Rachel had never seen Teen Beach Movie. She definitely grew up on Disney, but she's 2 years older than me, and me having a younger sister, I kind of leaned towards the newer Disney Channel as I grew up, and that was like peak Teen Beach Movie, but Rachel missed that one, and so we watched that, and I loved that. Of course, we had to watch Teen Beach 2 as well, and she also hadn't seen Lemonade Mouth, and so we watched Lemonade Mouth too. We were really churning them out, and then we also watched The Sound of Music, because that is her favorite movie, and I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, so we were like, well, while we're doing all these Disney movies, let's just throw in a really great one that she loves as well. I would say lots of fire movies in that night or two. I don't know if she would say the same. I watched Ice Age with my nanny kid, did not like that one. The Ice Age movies just don't hit for me. I don't like the dialogue or the pacing. Okay, and then I watched Opus. Opus is I would say a thriller. I don't know if it's a horror so much, maybe a psychological thriller. It is Iota Beery, and she goes to cover this like event thing that's supposed to be like for this new artist, but it's kind of culty, and she's just supposed to be a journalist, but she kind of gets involved in it, and there is so much that goes down, and there is a scene that still haunts me. If you like that kind of thing, go watch it and please tell me, because I wish I could talk to more people who have seen it, but I don't want to recommend it to anyone. I love Io though. Alright, let's talk about August. I got to travel a little more in August. That was very fun, but I was nannying a bunch. My friends finally convinced me in August that I need to start working on my second EP. So we get to start talking about that, because that was when I scheduled my first session. So I kind of prayed about it and thought about it, and I decided to have my friend Ben produce it. I knew his brother Brandon back in 2020 when I was doing my gap year program in Montana. We got really close. We have been friends ever since. I moved here and like have been hanging out with him and his family all the time. And his brother is their band's producer, and he produces for some other people too, and he's great but didn't have a ton of credits, and so I was like, should I? Because my first EP I went with someone very accomplished, Jake Labassi. I didn't necessarily want to pay as much as I paid for my first one, and I wanted a little more accessibility. Plus, Ben was one of the people who was really encouraging me to get this out, and so I appreciated the desire in that, I suppose, like that I could work with a peer instead of looking up to someone. And I think there's a time and place for each of those things, but I've already looked up to someone. There will be other times in my career when I do that, but I just really wanted to work with someone who I could see eye to eye with. I also was babysitting a bunch. I got to take one of the kids to a carnival. Lots of fun things with them. The summer just with them was so fun. I'm excited for another one. I got sick that month and I watched so much. I was watching Ginny in Georgia when I got sick. I couldn't tell you anything that happened in that season. I do not remember, whether because I was in like a feverish haze or because it is not memorable. I don't know. Okay, I've been telling you this all out of order and it's driving me crazy. So right at the beginning of August, I got to celebrate my friend Audrey's wedding. I love weddings, I've said this before, and so she invited our whole big friend group from Montana. That's where we met, and about half of us were able to go, and so they drove, a lot of them live in Georgia, and so they drove through Nashville, picked me up, and stayed in an Airbnb together and hung out, and it was just so much fun. And I loved celebrating her. Her husband is so sweet and perfect for her, so that was just such a good time to get to reunite again. Weddings are always where we see each other, so that was good. There was an Almost AM show. That is the band that Brandon and Ben and Caleb are in, and so that was fun. That was at the Blue Room, and I had been to the Blue Room before for Adam Melcher, who is my favorite artist of all time. To see my friends play the same venue is so cool. And then I visited my sister in New York the weekend after she had just moved in to college. My parents moved her in and then wanted to send me afterwards just to kind of like help her do the final things and to have a fun first week there to get her acclimated and everything. So I went, and that was great. We discovered this coffee shop in NoHo called Enli that is very overpriced but very good. I love when a matcha uses fresh strawberry puree, and they were making it in front of us, and it was so good. If you want a $12 matcha, you know where to go. And we got cupcakes, and we went shopping, and then of course I had to see some theater. I discovered rushing for the first time when I was on that trip. I decided to rush Oh Mary because, of course, that is a very difficult ticket to get. But I went and I met this girl. We talked through the whole 2-hour line, and then she and I were the last people to get tickets. And my sister and I both went to that together. We saw Jinx Monsoon as Mary, and oh my gosh, that show is so funny. It's so good. I was like cackling in my seat. And then I also saw Just in Time with Jonathan Groff, which was lovely. I love him so much. And then I wasn't gonna see one more. I was just gonna hang out with my sister, but we kind of like did all the shopping we wanted to do. There wasn't really anything else, and I still had like 6 hours before my flight. So I was like, should I go see another one? And the only thing that was at TKTS at the time that I was able to go to, because it was a matinee, was MJ. And so I went and saw MJ, and it was a good time. Like, as far as jukebox musicals go, it just was fun to see. And I got to do a fun seat move during intermission. Whenever I'm alone, if I spot an open seat, I always try to go down and take it. So I went from like, I don't know, halfway up the balcony to like second row of the mezzanine. So that was pretty great. Yeah, so that was fun to go visit her and stay in her new dorm and just see her living in New York. And I've gotten to do that a couple times since then, so I'm very thankful for that. It's definitely a flex to have a sister who lives in New York. She has not used the flex of having a sister that lives in Nashville yet, but I don't think she desires to. Very shortly after I went to New York, I had tickets for Dolly the musical. One of the things on my 2025 bucket list was to see a musical in Nashville, and so that was my first one. That was an epic intermission move because I was up in the balcony, and then I moved to like third row of the orchestra during the intermission. I really did not like that one, unfortunately. Not to slander it or anything, but a lot of the selling point is liking Dolly, and I don't have any feelings about Dolly Parton. I know she has been an activist, but I just like don't care all that much about her causes. Like, I definitely am more like environment, homelessness. She's more like literacy and I don't know, like feeding kids, I believe. And those just like aren't as much my causes. Not that there's bad causes or anything, it's just they don't resonate with me as much. And I think I'm a big proponent for being okay with the fact that you don't have the bandwidth to care about every single thing all the time, and that's something that is often expected of us in this day and age. I think that you should care about some things, and you should research everything a little bit to figure out what you do care about, but there are enough of us that if we all cared about a couple of things, the world would be a much better place. Anyway, I am not very interested in Dolly, and so not being interested in Dolly, I was looking for a good musical execution, and that is not what I found. Costuming was great, but the transitions were awful. There were so many really pitchy moments. It kind of just felt like a list of Dolly's accomplishments with zero transition in between them, like baiting us to just applaud for her. And the cherry on top for me was that at the end of the show, it uses like a massive screen in the background for all of its backdrops, and that's something that I'm very vocal about not enjoying. At the end, it's like a video of Dolly singing along to it, and I was like, this whole show's already been about her, we don't need a video of her. But I was glad to have seen a musical. And then at the end of the month, I went to Cape Cod for Labor Day. I think that's when that was. I never know when Labor Day or Memorial Day are. It was definitely weird because the dogs were not around, if I remember correctly. And I didn't enjoy that. It felt very empty, and I was kind of like, I don't need to come back here if the dogs aren't here. That's all I really cared about. I've said it before, Cape Cod is wasted on me. The fact that we have a place there and I have lived there and everything, so many people would kill for that, and I just am not a beach person, and I'm not a seafood person. You live and you learn. I learned that I don't need to be on Cape Cod if the dogs aren't there, so that was that. I only wrote one song that month, and it's a song I have not really come back to at all, but it was about my sink getting drained and just like the spiraling effect of that. I was cooking and it got clogged and I could not reset it for the life of me, and I had to call maintenance. And I was just like, ugh, being an adult is so hard, and that was what that was about.
Sink keeps bubbling, sink keeps bubbling, won't evaporate, yeah, the consequences troubling. Sink keeps bubbling, sink keeps bubbling, someone come and drain it, my anxiety is doubling.
For music, I was listening to a ton of Jake Minch, his new album. I really liked Say Uncle, and First I Was is such a great song. I also was listening to the song Annie's Got a Gun by Adon Diaz. I found that one on TikTok, and it's like an insane premise, but it's so fun. Go listen to it. I remember playing it for my mom. She had the same exact reaction I did, which was like, what am I listening to? This is weird. Is it okay that I'm enjoying it this much? I also got back into It Never Stops by Bad Books. Rachel and I had been talking about it a lot because she had gotten into it since I was into it earlier that year. So then once I was hanging out with her, we were listening to it a bunch. And then Dodie put out one of her first new singles, I Feel Bad for You, Dave. And so I listened to that a ton. I definitely listened to that album a lot when it came out too, but I love Dodie. I always have since like 2018. Kind of a weird song, not my favorite on her album, but it was what I had to work with. I read 2 books. I was still trying at that time, I think, to do like the fiction, nonfiction rotation. So I read In Gad We Trust by Josh Gad, just about his career accomplishments. It was also kind of just a list of his accomplishments, but he's great and I enjoyed learning about that. I like reading people's stories and I like when people tell me things, so reading biographies and autobiographies is great because it's them willingly giving me all their information, and I love it. And then I read Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, another one that I was like, I can watch the movie for this. I wanted it to be more of a shock than it was. I have always talked about how I love a plot twist, but nothing ever surprises me. And I think even if it's like not something I saw coming, I want shock value. I want there to be like, this never could have happened, but it did. And that was not something I got from Gone Girl, even though I thought I would. And then let's dig into movies. I watched Aladdin with my nanny kid. It had been a long time since I saw that. I love the songs in that, but the rest of the movie is mid to me, so I usually go to the Broadway version because I just prefer the vocalists in that one. I watched the Garfield movie with my nanny kid. I do not remember that at all. We watched Rio, and he got obsessed with Rio after we watched it. He would keep being like, birds, birds, watch birds. So I was enjoying it because I really like Jesse Eisenberg. I just think he's funny, and I think I got into him more after watching Rio. I enjoy him, so I was down to watch Rio with him. I watched Triangle of Sadness. That was super mid to me. I wanted that to be like just tense and relationally conflicting, and I think it was trying to make a political comment too, but it was another one of those movies I thought that was trying to do the White Lotus thing and just failed. It was more like a Lost White Lotus crossover. I don't know, it didn't land for me. Actually, I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. I also watched Death of a Unicorn, the one with Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd. That was very weird. I can be down with a weird movie, but it was not my style of weird. It was just like unicorn gore. We watched Toy Story 2. That is my favorite Toy Story. I love that one. That's where you get When Somebody Loved Me. Oh, heartbreaking. And then while I was sick, I double featured Sinners and K-Pop Demon Hunters. And this was in August, mind you, so this is way before any Oscar anything. And it was such a weird double feature, but it sort of made sense in my mind because they were both like dealing with these like supernatural creatures for the power of good. Sinners, I felt like, was an objectively great movie that was not something I would personally return to because I wanted to. It just was really well made. The cinematography was amazing. The acting was great. The idea was definitely original. But I'm not like big on like vampire olden day racism movies. As far as that goes, I don't think there are many of them. And I just am not a big Michael B. Jordan person. And I'm not a big Haley Steinfeld person. The way that it tried to bridge the gap between just all the different generations of music and culture was a great idea. I just didn't love it in the context that it was in, because it felt like it took me away from the story when they did that instead of helping me lean into it. I felt like if that had been its own like short or music video or something, it would have been incredible. But it just, I don't know. It interrupted the story for me. Maybe that's the point. Maybe that's why they did an aspect ratio shift. Maybe I just don't get it. And that could be okay. I don't need to get everything. I always try to. And then K-pop Demon Hunters, I actually liked. I really liked Golden for a long time until my babysitting kids became my nanny kids and they sang it all the time, and then I was like, okay, I've had enough of this. But it was good, and it, was a different animation style that was interesting to watch. I watched My Oxford Year with Sophia Carson. She's pumping out all those Netflix movies. I remember it being fine. I love London, but it wasn't like the thing for me. Oh my gosh, and then I watched A Star is Born for the first time. Whew. I was a sobbing mess after that movie. I loved it. And I think there are some like musician movies that are like, this is fakey, or like just doesn't have like passion in it. That's kind of how I felt about A Complete Unknown. But then watching this one, it was so full of feeling and passion and, trial and error. And I just love that in a music movie, and it absolutely wrecked me. I watched Bolt with my nanny kid. Fun story about Bolt. I went and saw that in theaters with my dad when I was a kid at the Mall of America IMAX, and it scared me for a really long time because I could only remember that guy that like had the green eyes or something, and I think he might actually only be a villain in like the fake video game portion of that movie, or like movie portion or whatever. I could be wrong. He might be the villain the whole time. I don't really remember. I watched a lot of movies in that month, but he scared me so bad that like it took me a really long time to be okay with the idea of that movie after that. But I showed it to a 2-year-old and he loved it. I watched this movie Wine Country. I thought it would be great because it's all of these SNL girls. Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, Maya Rudolph. But it was like wine mom comedy, and I am not a wine mom. I like to drink wine whenever I can do it classily, sophisticatedly, in a sophisticated manner. I watched Raya and the Last Dragon with my nanny kid. I would have thought he would like that more based on his love for like the animal movies and Moana and like the kind of adventure sort of thing that he liked. We watched Peter Pan, which was so good. I loved watching the more low stimulation movies with him. And then when I was with Macy in New York, we saw Superman. That was great. DC had a really tough era, and I think it's starting to bounce back little by little, and it definitely did with Superman. Marvel is in that era now, and it's not as bad DC was, but it's still pretty bad. So we get a little taste of good superhero movies with DC every once in a while. Oh, speaking of, I watched Thunderbolts on the plane, and that was better. I definitely appreciated that. It's hard to let go of the original Avengers to usher in this new era, but they did a great job, and it felt like more of a self-contained movie. You do have to have like all of the required reading done, Hawkeye and Black Widow and everything, but if you do, this isn't the kind of movie that's asking you like afterward to go watch a million more TV shows and a million more movies. And like, I feel like you probably could still enjoy it if you didn't watch those other things ahead of time. And that was refreshing from Marvel. We haven't had that in a minute. And I love the amount that they've been putting out, but it's been getting lazier. Then I watched Tinkerbell with my nanny kid. I hadn't seen that in forever, and I loved that as a kid, but it did not age very well for me. I wasn't super stoked about the actresses in it, and one thing I love about watching old Disney movies, if you don't get that like old style of animation that's just charming, is realizing that these actors that you know played these characters and you had no idea as a kid. And I had the opposite effect with Tinkerbell. I do love Kristen Chenoweth, but otherwise, like, I am not a big Mae Whitman fan. I don't know if she got ruined for me in Arrested Development because I really just leaned into how we were supposed to see her character, but I don't really like Mae Whitman. But you know what did do it for me was Megamind. I had never seen Megamind. I'd only seen that one guy on TikTok who normally does the Lorax, but like will sometimes dress up as Megamind and like go into Home Depot. But I loved that movie. It was so funny. It was great. I was like, dude, to this 2-year-old, this is a fire movie. And he's like, I'm gonna take it out. We watched Strange World. I didn't love that. It was like Disney's version of The Croods, and I don't like The Croods. I watched Joker. I had never seen it, and I remember when it came out, everybody was like, it's so like, stimulates conversations about mental health, and it's like, psychological movie. It's not your typical superhero movie. It's like disturbing. So I didn't watch it at the time because I was like, oh, I can't handle this. But then I watched it and I was like, this is what they were talking about? It's so stupid. I don't remember what it is. Like, he writes mental health on the paper or something like that, or depression or something. It is such a joke. It's like a movie about mental health written by someone who has never had anxiety, depression, OCD, anything. But it was kind of a laugh, honestly. I watched The Family Plan with my family. I did not like that. We watched a lot of those where it's like a very soft action movie with like a whole family. Usually they like have one or two B-list actors, and I don't care. We did watch the Gone Girl movie together. My mom actually kind of enjoyed that with me. My dad and my sister went to bed. I didn't love the movie, but I also wasn't obsessed with the book, so what really was there to ask for? I felt like Ben Affleck gave a very one-note performance in that movie, which, to be fair, the character is very one-note, so I don't know how much you could do with it. And then Rosamund Pike didn't have enough nuance for my taste. I have said before, I find her to be very classy and chic, and so I like watching her movies, but I don't think her acting necessarily lives up to the level of style she has in real life. And then the last movie I watched that month, this has taken forever, was The House. I watched that with my family. It was Will Ferrell and Amy Poehler, and they like need to send their daughter to college, and so they turn their house into a casino. And it is exactly what you would expect from that kind of movie. It's one of those things where like they just hired the great comedians and then churned out another movie. And some of those end up hitting. It's the same vibe as like The Hangover, 21 Jump Street. Some of them just get lost in the sauce, and that was one of them. All right, finally, September of 2025. I was still nannying, and that ended up being my final month with that nanny family. They ended up moving closer to family, and I ended up moving full-time with my babysitting family. So it all worked out very smoothly, even though I was very stressed about it. But that was my final month with them, and so, of course, movies and hanging out with them. They spent a week away with family, you know, processing all that and everything, and so I did get like a week off during that month, which was lovely. I started my playlist account that month, which has been kind of dead since then. I apologize. I think about it, but I just don't have all the time for it. The goal was to get people listening to my playlist so I can like add certain songs on there that will get more listens, but even so, I am a meticulous playlist curator just as a hobby. I love making playlists, and I have this whole method where I will sit down and listen to an entire album through on either my AirPods or my speaker and add every single song to a playlist. And if I don't have a playlist that matches that song, I make one. So everything goes on a playlist. And I listened through the entire album, and I wanted to publicize them. So go listen to some of my playlists, help get that thing off the ground. But right now I'm not putting in like any effort for it, and that's all right. But it was something on the bucket list for the year, and I did it. I also had the privilege of going with my friend Lane to pick out her wedding dress. I had never gotten to do that before. I'd been a bridesmaid, but I had never gotten to help someone pick out a wedding dress. And she was rather new to Nashville as well, and it was during a Friday, and it was very short notice because she was having like a very small wedding, and so I got to go with her and help her pick her dress, and it was so much fun. I wrote down as a life point Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. I was really trying to watch all the things that would allow me to know the people on Dancing with the Stars. I got super into Dancing with the Stars the year before, and so I wanted to know what was going on, and I didn't know the Mormon Wives, and so I was watching Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and it was driving me crazy. Those women are wild, but they're so entertaining, and I still follow it just a little bit, and I have my favorites, and it's just a fun thing to get into. Reality TV is like so low stakes for me that sometimes it's just nice to turn your brain off a little bit. I went to this show at Anzie Blue. There were two girls there, Hope DeLuca and Lainey Seitz, that both were lovely, and I hung out with Hope, and she's a friend. Lainey and I are like internet friends, and so that was so much fun to get to go support them. I started recording my second EP, so exciting. I've had these songs that I wrote in like my junior year of high school, bouncing around for a while, and I'm excited to put them out. I don't know, there's a little bit of the first EP in them, just that kind of wide-eyed optimism. It definitely just feels more alive and awake and energetic than the first EP. I got a flat tire. I was going to my small group, my church small group, and driving away, and I made it like not far before it said my tire pressure was at a 2. And so I pulled into this parking lot and it was completely flat. So I'm like calling AAA, but it's 9:30 and they are not coming. And so I'm just like sitting there waiting for AAA to come, and everybody's like, they're not gonna come. I'm texting my parents and stuff. They're like, you need to go home, take an Uber, come back in the morning. But I'm like, what about my car? And like, I can wait. And so I ended up asking my friend Aubrey if I could just like try to drive my car over to her house and park it there for the night so that it would like not get towed, which I guess that was maybe not the biggest of my problems at that time, getting towed. But she was like, I know how to change a tire. And I was like, girl, come over. So she was able to come over. She was so sweet. And we tried so hard. But for one, my car was on a downward slant. So it was really difficult. I don't know, like there was something where she just couldn't get it on. Maybe it just was that downward slant, because I think it did keep rolling off the jack. So we ended up leaving it, and she drove me back home for the night, and I Ubered back in the morning, and we ended up finding that all that happened was the little cover for like your valve, your air valve. I am probably butchering all these words, but the cover was off. I don't know how it fell off or what, but it just needed to be filled and have the cap put back on, and that was it. So luckily I didn't have to pay for anything, but I inconvenienced Aubrey, but we got to hang out, so that was fun. I also went to the Tom Tippin album release show. My friends are really good friends with him, and like we've been to a lot of the same events but never really talked, but it was fun to go. He did a really great cover of Sally. Yeah, got very into Dancing with the Stars, of course. And then I had my first TPAC show. I had bought the season pass for TPAC back in March, right when I moved. I definitely had to wait a while for the first shows to happen, but the first one was The Wiz. It was very fun. I definitely underestimated the amount of time I'd need to park beforehand. It's very difficult to park in Nashville if you haven't been before. You can park at the state capitol parking lot on show nights, but I got there like 45 minutes before the show started, and that was too late. It was full. So I could not park, and I ended up paying $45 that night to park, which was so annoying, but I'm better about it now. Now I have like my little car picnic before the show. As far as The Wiz went, I was unimpressed with the staging. It utilized a lot of that background screen. I feel like you should only use a screen when it informs the plot. I felt like Dear Evan Hansen did that well, and Mean Girls was riding a very thin line where it could do that. But I've seen so many that just like do fake sunsets and fake backdrops. They bother me. I'd rather have like a canvas painted backdrop. So I didn't like that, but the performers were incredible. The vocalists were insane. So vocally it was just like very fun to hear. September was the last month that I songwrited for a while. Oh my goodness, song wrote. I just kind of had a dry spell, and I try not to force myself to write when I'm not feeling inspired, which I have the luxury to do because I have so many songs. I don't know, I just kind of stopped for the whole winter. But I wrote 2 songs. I wrote this one song, Point of Comparison, that I actually really like. It felt a little bit like naive and underwritten at first, and there are some lines that are like, fuck me over so at least I know what I'm dealing with. There is a pre-chorus in that I was thinking about today, and I think about a lot. I have all this love that's stirring in me, running around the surface of my soul, damaging the borders that contain it, stirring crazy with nowhere to go. That's how I feel. And the whole point of the song is like, no one's ever given me a point of comparison for the standards that I should have for someone, or the kind of relationship I should expect to experience. So why are we all telling me that my standards are too high, or like, I don't know, that like just my expectations are wrong? Because I don't know what to expect, so I'm making it all up. I've been thinking about romance lately. I always am.
And I had all these reasons it hasn't happened. Maybe both of us need to mature. Maybe I become somewhat successful, learn another language, read a little more. But I have all this love that's stirring in me, running around the surface of my soul, damaging the borders that contain it, stirring crazy with nowhere to go.
And then I wrote this song, Pray For. It is an interesting song to be my final song I wrote before I took a break, because it was kind of talking about how I wanted romance, and I found myself actually praying for romance again. I forget to pray for myself a lot of the time. I was like, I want to be in a relationship. I should be praying for this. Even if it's like not God's will for me right now, I can pray for it and maybe that will move him or it will change my heart about it. I was praying for it and then things just kept happening that were like not great. Like that was around the week when there was this young girl who got killed in the subway system in New York and like nobody did anything. My friends and I were talking about that. They all just were bystanders and I probably would do the same thing. I would be scared, but that's a scary situation to be in. And Macy had just moved to New York. And then like my mom had a health thing come up that I'm still praying for, and luckily it's not as bad as we thought, but even so, scary. And I was like, why am I wasting my time praying for romance when there are people in my life that are hurting and there are, I don't know, just systems in place that are harming people and humanity is showing no remorse. I can't be praying for romance at a time like this. That was a similar reason why I stopped writing was, you know, I just kind of felt like I didn't have time to write when other things were going on.
All I meditate on now is all there is to do. I would entertain the thought if I hadn't read the room. I would ask the power that be, excuse me from the fight, but there's responsibility to try to figure out what's right. And I just checked the post, they say it's time to vote, and there's a list of names I probably should have known. So many goods and bads, picking arbitrary side, manufactured truth, so there's a thick divide. I wanted love, but there's chaos to abhor. Romance isn't what I pray for anymore.
The music I was listening to was definitely not as dire. I got really into the song Yippie by Hippocampus. I'd listened to their EP before, but I was listening to their song, I think it's Moonshine, something like that, that has a really cool opening guitar lick. And then I accidentally played through to Yippie-ki-yay, and I was like, this is even better! I love the melody line I think it's the chorus that contradicts the chords. It's just so cool. I did a cover of it if you want to go listen, but I love that song. I was listening to it a bunch, as well as the new Sabrina Carpenter album, Nobody's Son, and Audrey Hobart album. I got really into it, I don't know, and those two albums just feel like summer to me now, even though it was September. I didn't read any books, but I watched a couple movies, definitely less because I had that week off from nannying, but on the plane I watched Rocket Man. I have a bad history of watching great movies on planes that deserve to be watched on a bigger screen, but I watched Rocket Man and I really enjoyed it. I love Taron Egerton, I love Elton John, so that was a good time. It's not my favorite biopic. I really like Bohemian Rhapsody. I watched The Wild Robot with my nanny kid. That was fun. I really like Kit Connor, although the beard he's rocking these days is not my fave. But great movie. The animation is beautiful in that one. We watched a Goofy movie. That one took a long time to get through because he was not into it. I went and saw Light of the World with my babysitting kids. That one was about the gospel, and it was really sweet and really sad because the girl that I was babysitting just cried through the whole thing. She kind of heard the story but like didn't really know it, and it's an animated movie, it's geared toward kids, but she just like felt so much empathy. I watched WALL-E with my friends. They like were projecting it on the side of their house. Great movie. I missed the first like 15 minutes sadly, but man, that movie is fire. It ages so well, and the way that it like was able to express so much even with so little dialogue is incredible. It was so good. I watched the live action Beauty and the Beast. I think I'd seen it before, but having just read the Josh Gad biography, and it's really mid. It's so dark. Not like emotionally, but just like lighting wise. We watched Moana 2 and Frozen 2. I really like Frozen 2 because it came out in my junior year of high school, and Frozen 1 came out when I was like 4th grade, so it was right around when I'd be into it, and so I kind of had the nostalgia factor with Frozen 2. I just had a heyday with it. I saw it with Rachel in theaters, and then we had like this project in class where we had to make a music video but change all the lyrics, and we did it to Lost in the Woods from Frozen. I just loved it, so it was fun to watch that with my nanny kid. And then in theaters, I saw the Gabby's Dollhouse movie. Anytime that I can go to a movie with them while I'm on the clock is an amazing day. I don't care what movie it is. And Kristen Wiig was in it, so I was like, great, we'll see Kristen Wiig. But that movie was awful. Even the youngest that I was babysitting for was like, yeah, that was a bad movie. It was really, really bad. It was just like an hour and a half long commercial. And then the end was a prompt for another movie where they're gonna sell something else. All right, beautiful friends, we made it through July, August, and September of 2025. Thank you for listening as always. I'm excited to get through these. We're getting close. I know I've been saying that for the last 5 videos, but we're getting close. I hope you're all doing so well. I am excited to share some things with you soon. I need to go do a bunch of like marketing stuff and press stuff and logistics stuff. I just remembered I need to file copyrights. But it's all in fun, and this is part of the life that I want to live, so thank you for supporting it. I love you. Let me know your thoughts, questions, anything you want to say, and I'm going to see you next time. Bye, friends.